What is up, guys? John with Gaming Through the Decades here, and man, I finally got another pickups video. It's been like a month. I couldn't believe it. I was going through my YouTube feed today, and I'm thinking like, man, I need to do a pickups video. So when was the last time I did one? And I checked, and yeah, wow, it's been like a month. So here we go, guys. It's a big load of games and some hardware actually, which is kind of interesting with a fun story behind it. So it's gonna be a little bit of a longer pickups video. Generally try to keep them a bit shorter. Unfortunately, that's not going to be the case this time. However, with no further ado, let's get into this, and I promise I'll make it interesting and we'll have some fun along the way. So let's check it out and see what we picked up for pretty much most of April. Alright, so just like every pickups video from before, we'll go ahead and start from the oldest to newest. And the oldest one I had was going to be a Sega Genesis game, and I have really not been focusing on Genesis and the 16-bit and 8-bit too much, and you'll figure out why here in a few minutes. But this first game is a Sega Genesis game. It was complete in box that I found surprisingly at one of the local retro stores that's kind of gougy when it comes to their prices. So I saw this for a pretty good deal. It was about complete in box. It was about, I think, $4 or $3. So a complete in box for a Sega Genesis game, in my opinion, is always a good deal, unless of course it's a sports title, and that is The Adventures of Mighty Max. The Adventures of Mighty Max is a platform game developed by WJS Design and published by Ocean Software. It is based on the US cartoon of the same name, which was in turn based on a UK toy line available in the 1990s. It follows Mighty Max, a kid with a magic cap, allowing him to travel to different dimensions. Now again, I've never played this game before until I saw it and picked it up. And you know, it's just your basic platformer game. It's got a very Saturday morning cartoon feel to it. I played a little bit through the first level, and that was about it. It's a fun game, it's a fun platformer, and hopefully I'll be playing this one a little bit more. Yeah, so that's the first one, and yeah, pretty decent game, no nostalgia factor, but for $3, you know, seems to be all right for the most part, so definitely a good buy when it comes to that. All right, let's get into, I believe, the next generation, which is going to be a lot of PlayStation games. Now, most of these, with the exception of one, there's three of them here, with the exception of one, was a Goodwill, or not Goodwill, some Goodwill, some thrift stores. You may have seen one or two of these on my game hunting videos. If not, you know, here we go. The first one, this was at a thrift store. I got this for $1. And for those who know me, know I'm not a huge RPG player, especially nothing turn-based RPGs. It's always turned me off, but lately I've got a few friends trying to get me over to the dark side of turn-based RPGs. I'm not sure if this is a turn-based, but you know, I'm gonna play it a little bit. It was $1 at a local thrift store. And this is called Darkstone. Darkstone is an action role-playing video game developed by Delphine Software International for Microsoft Windows and PlayStation, and was released in 1999 for the PlayStation 1. And you know, this was, I saw it and I texted one of my friends and co-hosts, said if it was asked them if it was a decent game, and they said it was pretty good. So for $1, I'll throw this one in when I get around to it, and we'll kind of just go from there. So yeah, Darkstone for the PS1. All right, now the next game, this is a PS1 game. This is a very common game, a very well-known game, and this is one you would have seen on my game hunting video, and that is Driver 2. Driver 2, published by Infogrames, was released for the PlayStation in November of 2000 and is the second installment of the Driver series. Again, a little bit of nostalgia factor for this game. I played it a lot when I was younger, obviously, because it was my generation of my late to early teenage years was the PS1. So just an overall good game. I think it usually retails for around maybe 10 bucks. I found it at Goodwill for, I think it was $2.99. So complete inbox, both this looks good. So hey, I'm gonna go ahead and pick that up every time. The next one is a game that I mentioned on the Cartridge Connection podcast as one of my hidden gems in our hidden gem segment. And I bought this at a retail store, and that's because it's only a $1 or $2 game. They generally, almost dropped it, they generally categorize it into the sports section, but it's got more of an arcade type feel to it. And that is Moto Racer for the PS1. Moto Racer is an arcade-style motorcycle racing game developed by Delphine Software International and published by EA. It featured both dirt and street bikes and a variety of tracks released for the PlayStation in 1997. Now, this is a fun game. If you listen to the Cartridge Connection podcast, I mentioned on there that it's got a very Ridge Racer or Daytona feel to it as far as the arcade goes. You know what it reminds me of? If you remember in the 90s, they had the arcade racing games where you actually sat on the bike and you can go through the course. It's got that type of feel to it. So it's a very good game. It's a good one if you're, even if you're not in the racing games, it's just a fun arcadey throwback retro racing game. So I really enjoyed this one. And I'm glad I have it in my collection because I used to, in the summer when I was younger, I used to sit on my floor after after I would come in from being in the pool all day, and we had a wood floor, and I'd sit there and I'd play that game, sit there on my towel, eat some microwave pizza, but a very nostalgic type game for me as well. So I'm glad I have it in my collection, and my 4-year-old really enjoys it, which is really cool. All right, now the last PS1 game, never heard of before, haven't even had a chance to play it yet, and that is Lucky Luke for the PS1. It's just in a regular case, so I'll just go ahead and pop an image right here of the actual PlayStation game. Lucky Luke is based on the Franco-Belgian comic by the same name. It's published by Atari and developed by Infogrames. It was released for the PlayStation in November of 1998. But yeah, it looks like a platformer, and I'll go ahead and throw this in. It was $1. And I looked up a quick review on it. It looks like a pretty fun game. And it's another one my kids might really enjoy, so that's pretty cool. If not for anything, if I don't like it, maybe they'll get some enjoyment out of it. And I believe they also made it for the Game Boy Advanced, from what a few others told me. So it's a multi-platform game, and it looks pretty fun, so I'm glad to have that part of my collection. All right, now the next one is hardware. And I found this at a Goodwill for $3.99. I'm almost positive they just mispriced it because the Goodwills in my area, they really suck as far as their pricing goes. And the guy didn't even want to really sell this to me for $3.99 because he looked at the price and he goes, that can't be right. And I told him, well, it probably doesn't work because they have issues. And I have a video of me restoring it, and that is a Fat Boy PS2. It's funny because I've wanted a PS2 for a while now. Number one, because it's a great system. I have a lot of good memories with the PS2 when I was in the military. And then my early adult years. And I just remember there being such a great library of games, and I've been holding off on buying one because I really didn't want to pay retail for one, just because, well, I don't like to pay retail to begin with. And something in the back of my head just kept telling me, just wait, you'll find one, you'll find one. And I'll be damned, I came across one for $3.99, it worked. All I had to do was purchase the AV cord. Actually, no, I didn't even have to purchase that. I actually just replaced my PS1. Yeah, I was very glad to get that and start collecting for it because games are incredibly easy to come across and they're practically falling off trees anymore with the prices. Unless you're looking for a few rare titles, they're pretty cheap. And this is my new co-host. This is Emily. My wife's at the gym, so I figured she could join us and talk about some retro pickups and some finds. So now that gets me into the PS2 games that I picked up, and I'll just kind of go through these one by one. And there's quite a few here, so I'll try and keep it as interesting as possible. And all right, so let's get started. So the first one is Grand Theft Auto 3. Now, this was a thrift store find for about $3.99. Now, I remember playing Vice City a lot, and that was one of the games that was real popular when I was in the military. And I have the second one on the Dreamcast, which still has that top-down view. And, I was never really into those, but from what I remember, Vice City was very good. And, for the price on this, it's complete. Well, it doesn't have the map, so I guess technically it's not complete. But for that price, I'll go back and play this one. From what I recall, it's a good game. And, it's, another awesome PS2 title, in my opinion. The Grand Theft Auto series, always good games. Can't really go wrong there. Now, this is the only game that I really paid retail for. And this is one of my favorite games. It's one of my favorite games, one of my favorite series. And that is Castlevania Lament of Innocence. Castlevania Lament of Innocence, released as Castlevania in Japan, Europe, and Australia, is an action-adventure video game developed by Konami for the PlayStation 2 console, released October 21st of 2003. Now, the 3D Castlevanias really get a lot of crap. Now, this is definitely one of my favorite 3D Castlevanias. It's got a Resident Evil type, Devil May Cry feel to it, but it still has the classic Castlevania feel, the gothic feel to it, especially with the music. It's got next to Symphony of the Night, I believe it has the second best soundtrack of a Castlevania game. This next one is a fighting. You guys know I love fighting games. I bought this at a retail store, but it was only like $1.50, and it's not a great game, and that is Virtual Fighter 4 for the PS2. Virtual Fighter 4 is a fighting game by Sega. It is the fourth game in the Virtual Fighter series. The game was first released in arcades on the Naomi 2 board in 2001, and then later released for the PlayStation 2. For those who know me, obviously know I'm big into arcade games, and the fighters are a huge part of that. So Virtual Fighter, I have the first one for the 32X, and I figured I'd go ahead and grab this one. And I have the fifth one. Well, I had the fifth one for the 360, which is probably the best Virtual Fighter out there. So I figured I'd give this one a try and see how it is. Now the next game is, I've never played this IP on the PlayStation before, which is kind of surprising because I was a huge fan of it in the Sega days. And this game is a ported game, and it is Sonic Heroes. Sonic Heroes is a 2003 platform video game developed by Sonic Team USA and published by Sega for the GameCube, PlayStation 2, Xbox, and Microsoft Windows. It was first released on December 30th, 2003 in Japan, and then on January 5th, 2004 in the US. Played a little bit of this game. I played through the first level, and you know, I gotta say, it's a good game. It reminds me a lot of Sonic Adventure, but I will say this: it's really a shame that the Dreamcast went the way it did, because I'll tell you what, there's a huge comparison between the Dreamcast version and the PS2 version. Well, to me, the Dreamcast Sonic Adventure is just a much, the colors are much better. It's a little bit of a smoother game. And its overall presentation, I just think it's a much better game. Now, that could possibly be because this is a port, but man, it really got me thinking about the Dreamcast and how much of a shame it was to see it go. Now, the next one is another fighting game. And, you know, I love the first three in the PS1 era. And they're great games, so I've never actually, this is another one I never played for the PS2, and that is, you guessed it, Tekken Tag. You know, this is the first time playing it, really enjoyed it. I'll probably play through it on the single player, and just to unlock all the extra characters, but man, it reminds me so much of the third one. It's like an upgraded it's like an upgraded Tekken 3. You know, it's got all the characters, the graphics are better polished, obviously. Frame rate is much smoother. Man, such an awesome game. And, you know, that was another one I bought at a retail store, but I had some trade-in credits, so it was kind of like I didn't pay for it. At least that's what it feels like. That's how it feels like when I trade stuff in. Now, let's see here. All right, so these next two, they are pawn shop finds, and this was a really good deal for both of them. She wants to talk, so she keeps spitting it out. Maybe she just doesn't want it, but she wants to talk to you guys too, I guess. These were pawn shop finds, and they had some older stuff there, like some cartridge games, but they were just mostly sports titles, so that was kind of disheartening a little bit. First one is Final Fantasy X. And then the next one, Final Fantasy XII. Now, Final Fantasy X is turn-based, so it's going to be really interesting to see how I like this one. I do have to get a PS2 controller. I'm still rocking the DualShock 1 for the PS1, and once I get a DualShock 2, you know, I'm going to throw 10 in first and see how I like it. See if I can start enjoying those turn-based RPGs. But from what I hear, 12 was a much better game to begin with. So we'll see how that works out. Now the next two games were actually sent to me by Cliff, or Southern Star Gamer, and he just sent them to me, and he's one of my co-hosts on the podcast. And I haven't got a chance to play these yet, but they look like really good games. The dude definitely knows my taste when it comes to video games, so that's cool. And the first one is Freedom Fighters. Freedom Fighters is a 2003 third-person shooter game for the PlayStation 2, GameCube, Xbox, and Windows. It was released by IO Interactive and published by Electronic Arts. The game is set in an alternate history where the Soviet Union has invaded and occupied New York City. The player takes the role of Christopher Stone, a plumber-turned-resistance movement leader fighting against the invaders. All right, so yeah, as you can see, you know, the description says it best. I haven't played it yet, so I really can't talk much on the game itself as far as any sort of short review. I can just kind of give you the info, but you know, it looks like a fun, you know, action type game, and I'm sure I'll enjoy it. And the second one is a racing game It's a combat racing game, and it's the Jak and Daxter racing game, and that's Jak X Combat Racing. Jak X is a combat racing game developed by Naughty Dog and published by Sony Computer Entertainment for the PlayStation 2. Released for the PS2 October 18th of 2005. Now, for those who know, you know I'm a huge Twisted Metal fan, also big racing fan. So again, haven't played it yet, but you know I can only tell you what I've seen in the description. So you know I'm excited to play it. But wow, what a bunch of games! I mean, yeah, I'll tell you what, these PS2 games are so incredibly cheap. I mean, pretty much anywhere, unless you're looking, like I said, for some rare RPG games, they're literally falling out of the trees. And I gotta say, I'm glad I found this console. I'm glad I'm getting back into the PS2. I really forgot how much I loved that system. And man, you know, it brings me back to like backwards compatibility. You know, I forgot how backwards compatible this thing was with the PS1. My PS1 is actually sitting right up there. I've got no use for it right now, so I'm just gonna kind of use it as a spare for now. But man, glad I picked it up. You know, awesome find, and man, I'm just so glad to be playing these games again. I've got one more game, and it's a very common game. Picked it up at a retail store because I didn't feel like looking for it. It was starting to piss me off because I couldn't find it anywhere. And I paid, you know, retail price for it, and it's one of my favorite Sonic games. And that is Sonic Adventure for the Sega Dreamcast. Sonic Adventure is a platform video game developed by Sonic Team and published by Sega. Originally released for the Dreamcast as a launch title in Japan in 1998 and then worldwide in 1999. I used to have it back in the day, but man, do you want to talk about nostalgia? There was something about the Dreamcast when it came out that, you know, everything, that was really when graphics changed, in my opinion, with that generation. The polygons became better shaded, much smoother, and that's when you really started to see the realism of video games. They kind of really started to look real for your in-games. You know, clothes would move, you know, in fighting games. You know, you had Mitsurugi, and his robe would move as he fought. So, you know, just a lot of nostalgia there for that console. But Sonic Adventure is, you know, probably one of my favorite Sonic games. You know, of course, I love the first three for the nostalgia factor, but man, I'll tell you what, overall presentation and just gameplay, Sonic Adventure is right up there in the top 5, if not top 3. But hope I didn't bore you guys to death, man. I hope you enjoyed the pickups video. I've already, you know, started looking for May. I'm out and about, and I've got some things planned. And man, this was a huge load. I'm glad you guys were here along for the ride to just talk about these games with me and really enjoy these games. Just kind of look back on these games. You know, so if you like the video, go ahead and click on the Patreon. I'm just kidding. Just like the video. You can just like the video. Of course, share it. And hey, if you like what you see on the video, guys, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And there's much more content to come. I'm going to try and be more consistent with these pickup videos because, man, as you can see, a lot of stuff. I like to add in the clips to show you guys the games if you haven't seen them before. So sorry for making it super long. I don't know how long it's going to be yet because I have to piece it together and edit and do all that fun stuff that, you know, you guys also probably enjoy doing. So I'm glad we could be here, me and my co-host, who is now sleeping, of course, because that's what she likes to do. And until next time, guys, we'll see you on the next video.